I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today again. If we could just go over some of the questions and you can tell our viewers about your experience and kind of what your thoughts are from it.
Yes. So the first thing that you had asked about was why did I volunteer to sign up as an election judge for the general election this year? And I'll have to say that I actually had a pretty honorable motive for doing so, because once the coronavirus pandemic hit, the election was in the news, as well as the coronavirus, obviously. And I, based on my election experience, or my voting experience, I should say, certainly recognized the fact that many of the poll workers, at least in the location where I vote, tended to be older volunteers. And so the coronavirus has a disproportionate impact on people who are older, and it was a greater risk to them. And so I decided pretty early on that I ought to do my part as a relatively young, relatively healthy person to sign up to be an election judge and to prevent some older people who normally work as election judges from being forced into doing that and potentially risking their health.
Yeah, that's wonderful of you. So throughout your day, it's a very long, busy day, as you know. What would you say was like the most rewarding or the most kind of eye-opening part of your day that day?
Yeah, first of all, I've always just thought election day is so cool. It's so patriotic. You feel, at least I feel good showing up to vote. I feel good standing in line, because you feel like this is what our forefathers fought and died for, is the rights for us as Americans to vote. And so it was very neat to see in this election the level of participation. As an election judge, you show up at the polls at I believe 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning. It was early, put it that way. You show up early in the morning, and it was very encouraging to see that as you're driving up to your polling place, it's still pitch black outside. It's dark. You see headlights from cars. But as you walk up then to enter into the school, which was our polling place, there is a line already at that early hour of the morning of people, at least 100 or 200 people deep, already waiting in line out in the dark to exercise the right to vote. And that was just really cool to see. And this is us showing up. I'm thinking we showed up at 5 in the morning, because the polling place, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And the polling place opened at 6, but as election judges, we got there at 5 in the morning to start setting up. So already at 5 in the morning, there are people outside this polling place, and it still doesn't even open for an hour, which is cool to see. But the one thing I thought that was kind of eye-opening to me is we live in a society, especially today, that is so polarized in terms of there are people on one side of the spectrum, people on the other. And when you sign up to be an election judge, you have to declare yourself for the purposes of the general election, either as a Democratic election judge or a Republican election judge. And so I've never considered myself to be a very political person. I voted across party lines, but I generally align as a Democrat. And so I didn't frankly know what to expect during this whole experience. But the thing that was very enlightening and frankly very encouraging is the bipartisan team of election judges that were there to work. And there were, I don't know, 8 or 10 of us, maybe 12 of us. Nobody once during the course of the day ever made any kind of political comment supporting this person or this view or that view. These people were there, myself included, to do nothing but to do the job and to make sure that the election was administered fairly. Nobody, you other than the fact that you had to identify yourself as a Republican or a Democrat, nobody said a word amongst the election judges about politics. And that was cool because it wasn't about politics. It was about doing our jobs and making sure that this election was carried out using the appropriate procedures to have a full and fair election. That was enlightening.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you say that, because I think a lot of people, you know, don't understand just how much focus is putting on having a bipartisan team. You know, not only the people out in the field like yourself, but then also internally. You know, every single position at the Board of Elections has to be bipartisan, you know, just to keep our checks and balances in place. And, you know, I'm kind of like you know, the people that I work with every day, you know, if I didn't have that organization chart telling me, you know, who belonged to which party, I honestly wouldn't know, because we're all so focused on the end goal and making sure that we, you know, are working on serving the voters of St. Louis County. So it's interesting that you say that.
The procedures too that the election board has in place are designed to be so fair and to make sure there is no partisanship in the election is great, because I worked with a woman, my teammate essentially was a Republican election judge by the name of Helen. Great lady. She and I worked together all day, and after sitting in a chair for 4 or 5 hours, she has to get up and use the restroom. And so before she could get up and use the restroom, she has to call over the election judge, the manager who's on site, the election supervisor, and say, I need to use the restroom. So before she even leaves the table where I'm sitting, they have to find a Republican representative to come over, Republican election judge to come over and sit with me so that a Republican could replace a Republican in the chair next to me. So there's never a time when, you know, Dan, the Democratic election judge, is sitting there doing anything on his own. You're always paired with a person from the opposite political party.
Yes, absolutely. So that was the kind of rewarding part, in your opinion. Were there any challenging parts or anything that you kind of didn't expect during the day?
And this goes, it was an overall extremely positive experience. You get up early, and I am not an early morning person. I tell everybody I work the second shift. But you get up early, and it is a long day, because you get there at 5 o'clock to set up a polling place, and you are there until the polls close. And under our law, as long as the polls close at 7 o'clock, but as long as you're in line at 7 o'clock, by 7 o'clock, as a voter, you have the right to vote. So you wait till all those people funnel through. And then there's a pretty elaborate process that's followed too, to make sure all the votes are tabulated correctly, that all the numbers match up, that the numbers of ballots match the numbers on the computers and that type of thing. And you pack up all the equipment, and it takes a good 45 minutes after the last voter to get that done. So it was a long and exhausting day, but it was actually much easier than I expected it to be, because it was just so energizing, and it was so neat to see the constant flow of people coming in to vote. I'll tell you one thing that was so inspiring for me to see, and I mentioned that there was a big, long stream of people all day long. There was a guy who came up, and he had 2 broken legs, and he had 2 casts and walking boots on a walking boot and a cast on each leg. And he's walking with the assistance of a cane very gingerly. And that man stood in line for 2 hours to exercise his right to vote. Wow. Broken legs. It's just heartening.
Absolutely.
It was a neat experience.
Absolutely. So as far as like the procedures and everything that day, did you feel like the training that you had received in advance really prepped you and the rest of your team pretty well for the processes throughout the day?
The training was really good. The election board did a nice job in publishing a manual that the election judges could download, and it was another thing that was very cool. The people in my training class, there were a number of people that took the training class twice. There are a number of people that I know, like myself, who downloaded that training manual and read it 3 or 4 times.
That's
And
great.
it was neat to see the commitment from all the people in my training class and the other election judges I worked with. You saw the commitment that people wanted to get it right, wanted to do it exactly according to procedures to make sure that the election went off smoothly and as quickly as possible. So yeah, the election board did a great job with the
Well,
training.
thank you. It was certainly a new experience for all of us here because we did virtual training back in August as well, but we haven't really been in a situation prior to that where we've had to conduct all the training virtually. And so, there were some few challenges internally as far as making sure, everybody had access to Zoom and understood how to use it. But I think all in all, it went out without a hitch and worked pretty well for us. So I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah, no complaints whatsoever. The fact that I'm one who likes the in-person training, the ability to interact the way I think you can only interact sometimes personally with a group of people, but the Zoom training was conducted and it obviously got the job done, because when I showed up at the polls and started going through the work, I felt I was very well prepared.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. So now that you went through presidential election, do you anticipate that you'll continue to sign up to be an election judge for future elections?
There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. It was neat to be a part of the process, and and as much as anything, it was neat to be part of the process because some of the things that I would hear about the election and the procedures that were followed in the election and things that had gone wrong, I was able to say to people, I was there. I worked the system. I operated. I did this for 12 hours one day. That's not how it works. The system is set up to work effectively. It's designed to be completely above board and fair. And the fact that you're able to participate in that process, peek behind the curtain, so to speak, participate all day long in the process, really made you not only feel good that you were doing your part for your city or your state or your country even, but it made you feel that a sense that the election system is very fair and it does the job that it's intended to do. The thing that I'm particularly encouraged by too is when I came home that day, my wife and daughters all congratulated me for having worked, and a couple of days later, my oldest daughter said she wants to sign up to be an election judge.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful.
Yeah, so it was really encouraging to see a lot of the younger people who were involved, not only as election judges, but watching first-time voters come through and vote for the first time. That it was really cool because mostly when a first-time voter would show up, the election judges or others in the crowd would kind of give them a little round of applause to encourage them to continue to participate, because it's just so important.
Yeah, so we're always trying to work to get younger people to help with the election, and we kind of unintentionally did that this year. So one of the things that we launched, I'm sure you heard about it on election day, was the Wait Time app, which allowed people to look at any polling place within the county, because they could vote anywhere, and see what the current number of people in line was. So therefore they could get an idea of how long it was going to take to get through the line and be able to vote. And so we ended up hiring mostly 18-year-olds to execute that platform for us that day. And so, that wasn't necessarily the intention in the beginning. It was really to help people, avoid standing in line for a long time, but it kind of unintentionally helped us bring in a lot of people that probably wouldn't have worked the polls otherwise. And so we hope that that will continue in the future, and that we'll be able to continue to get younger people in, because we think it's not only important for them to be able to see it, but also to help, like you mentioned in the beginning, with the people that are older and maybe not able to work anymore. So.
Yeah, I'll tell you another thing that was really neat in the context of the coronavirus pandemic is, I, like most people, had been really restricted in my social activities and my work activities. I was working primarily from home for months at a time, and you just didn't get to see people. And so I was lucky enough to be assigned to work as a poll judge at my normal polling place. And so during the course of the day, I don't think it is an exaggeration to say that I probably saw 300 or 400 people come through that are friends of mine from the neighborhood, from my old neighborhood, from my church, who I see around at the store, and actually get to see them come through the line at the polling place. And you get to see all these people that you haven't seen in months and months and months. It was really fun in that regard.
That's really neat. So I guess the only other question I have for you is if you could maybe shed some light or provide some encouraging words to someone who is maybe considering being a poll worker, but just hasn't taken the time to sign up yet or taken that step, what would you say to them? What would you say to encourage them to make that commitment?
I would tell them that really all I can tell them, which is I participated in it. I did it thinking I was sacrificing to do this in order to prevent an older person from having to work the polls. But it ended up being such a good experience that I feel that it was not a sacrifice on my part at all. It was a benefit to me. So I can guarantee that if a person has any interest in participating in this process, they will find it far more rewarding than any sacrifice that you have to make in order to participate in the process. You'll enjoy it.
I agree with you. Was the process for signing up fairly easy? Did it take you very long to get signed up and get assigned to a location?
It was a matter of making a phone call to St. Louis County Board of Elections. They took down my email address and sent me an application, which took about 5 minutes to fill out, and got it back to them. And within a week or so, I was getting calls to number one, the folks at the election board are so good about thanking you for your service, and but then to get you set up for the training, to assign you to the polling places. I was blown away by the election board. They were so professional and so dedicated and so attentive to what they were doing. I was impressed.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah. Well deserved.
Thank you. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to add today?
I don't think so. Other than to encourage anybody who has any interest in participating in this process to contact the election board. You'll find it very personally rewarding and educational.
Good. Well, thank you for your time today. I appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk with me and talk through this process, and hopefully encourage some other folks to do the same.
Okay, good talking to you, Nicole.
Thank you, Daniel.
Bye.